everyone. Welcome back to the Astrology podcast. My name is Jessie James, and I am your host. And this week we are going to be doing the astrology of Amy Poehler. I was originally planning to do One Direction, but I looked at Amy's birth chart when I was doing some work this week, and I was like, I actually think that this is what I should be covering right now. And so we're going to cover it, and she's awesome, and I'm really excited. Anyway, before we get into that, life updates. My best friend is doing a watch of Glee, and he has actually never seen Glee before, so this is really exciting, but he's sending me so many video clips that I'm like, okay, now I actually need to do a rewatch of Glee because I haven't watched Glee since it came out, at which point I was like a preteen. Like, I don't actually remember what year it came out, but I think I was in like middle school, maybe freshman year of high school when Glee was originally airing. And I know that a lot of things probably did not make sense to my stupid little naive, innocent pea brain back then that will make me laugh a lot today. And I think that watching it will explain so much of my personality, honestly. And so my best friend was watching it, and then we got to talking. And he was like, I probably didn't watch it because I was never a theater kid, even though he's an actor now. And I was like, I was only a theater kid in elementary and middle school because my high school only had one theater teacher, and they had like really weird beef with me. I remember that we just like really didn't get along. And like, this was a famous theater teacher. Like, people would come to my teeny tiny little high school instead of going to a different school that they were zoned for because of the theater program specifically. As far as I'm aware, none of those people became professional actors, so I'm actually not quite sure how prolific this theater teacher is, but regardless, they had very weird beef with me, and I was like, looking back, this is so strange to like be a grown adult person. Like, this person was like in their 50s, 60s, like they were up there in age, beefing with literally a 13-year-old who just, you know, has a lot of self-doubt because she's been abused by her dad her whole life. Very strange. I also had this behavior with my high school dance coach, who I mainly attribute my eating disorder to, because she just hated me. And I'm just like, how strange to be a grown adult person and to completely traumatize a child just because you don't like their vibes. But I guess that's how it's always been, you know? I mean, I feel like my dad did the same thing. But anyway, we were also talking about how strange it is that, like, in high school, teachers were having affairs with students. And it just reminded me that my English teacher, Bobby Forrest, in like 10th grade, I think, was a creep. Like, we just knew he was creepy, but he was like funny as well. So we would do a bunch of pranks on him. Like, we would have someone hide under his desk, and then when he sat down at his desk, they would like grab his ankles. We put ketchup on a pad and like left it on his desk. We did a lot of different things to him. But my friends and I like called him a pedophile, and we were 14, like this was 10th grade, and we did an English project when we were studying the Odyssey where we had to create our own video of a hero's journey. And so we made ours about our English teacher. His name was Bobby Forrest. We called him Fobby Borst, and we and we made his whole thing that he was a pedophile and he was going to Neverland and he was secretly the long lost twin of Michael Jackson. It was so silly. It was so funny. I genuinely think that it's still like private on my Facebook somewhere. And it's so interesting because we obviously turned it in and he hated it. The movie was really well done, by the way, but we ended up getting like a B- or something on it just because we insulted our teacher. And despite it being Oscar-worthy video footage. And then, like 2 years later, when I was a junior or a senior in high school, he gets caught having an affair with a student. And it's like, we literally called that. Like, we literally, at 14 years of age, made a video about this and turned it in to our teacher and played it in front of him. Like, have I always been on my vigilante shit? And now I'm like, well, where did that bravery go? Like, where is that part of me that was able to stand up to power straight to its face? So now I'm sort of on this, like, am I supposed to change the world thing? But I'm also in like a deep mermaid obsession right now. But yeah, it is just very strange to revisit things from your past, like things that I considered normal. Like, oh yeah, I hate my dance coach. I hate my theater teacher. We don't get along. And then be like, I was 13 and they were like 60. And they caused me so much trauma just because they didn't like me. Like, that is really messed up when you think about it. And so we try not to think too much about it. But now I'm thinking about it a little bit more. Let's see, are there any other things that have happened this week? Taylor Swift did her countdown and then ghosted us. But Travis Kelce posted a photo dump of photos introducing Taylor to his Instagram feed, though he still does not follow her on Instagram. And everyone is being really weird about it because they're like, oh, these pictures of him in the woods fishing with these guys, including Taylor's brother Austin. This is a bachelor party and I know it. And I'm like, why would you think that? Like, I don't think about bachelor parties ever. And so when I see a bunch of guys together, like, my last thought is this is a bachelor party, and my first three thoughts are about the gay things that they're probably doing in those woods. Like, it's giving Brokeback Mountain. And yeah, I don't know. People were also saying any of the pictures where they were wearing white were an engagement party, and it's like, alternately, they're just wearing white. Like, I just don't understand why people can't be normal. Did you listen to Lavender Haze? Did you hear the words, no deal, that 1950s shit they want for me? And yet they're always doing the 1950s shit. Like, why do you care so much about someone getting married and someone getting engaged and someone having a bachelor party? Like, you can have fun without doing like a major heteronormative romantic milestone. And I understand the point of view because I was also in it last summer when I thought I was straight and was trying to get engaged as a way to, like, you know, prove myself, prove that men liked me enough to marry me, which was not fun. But now I'm gay and I'm single and I don't really want to get married. So I am living proof that you can actually beat the heteronormative conditioning that has been drilled into you by society for years and years and years, decades and decades. You can overcome it. And the first step is to stop caring about a bachelor party. I haven't been to Nashville in a very long time. I don't really plan to go back. It's not a very fun city if you don't drink. And so I don't see bachelorette parties anymore. I don't really have any friends who are getting married. I do have friends who are getting married, but I don't have like close contact with the marriage process. I just will be invited to the wedding. And so I just never really think about these things. I don't know. Life is more freeing when you don't really give a shit about romantic milestones. What I'll say, it'll be a year on Friday since I got out of my relationship with my evil ex-boyfriend, who my astrologer literally told me was a demon, is that things get better. Is that you can actually stop caring what other people think and trying to be on other people's timeline and fulfill goals that other people want and that you've adopted because they're social norms. And you can start living in accordance with your true self and what you actually want and not giving a shit what other people think. That transition can happen a lot quicker than you think it can. You just need to remove yourself from the situation and like find friends who are also not beholden to social norms. And it sucks that like women have to feel this way and that we are so conditioned to believe that our only worth is when we have a man attached to us, because it's so harmful and traumatizing. And there's a reason that when women get divorced, they remarry way less than the rate that men do when they get divorced. Anyway, speaking of people who are divorced, let's start talking about Amy Poehler. Amy was born on September 16th, 1971 in Newton, Massachusetts, and she moved to the nearby town of Burlington, Massachusetts, where she grew up, and she describes Burlington, Mass. As a blue-collar town. She was raised by her parents, Eileen and William, who are both school teachers, and she has one sibling, a younger brother named Greg. She credits a middle school or elementary school performance, I guess, of The Wizard of Oz for getting her into acting and inspiring her to become a performer. And I was listening to her podcast episode of her podcast, Good Hang with Amy Poehler, with Cole Escola yesterday doing prep work. And she was talking about this. So clearly it had like a marked impact on her life. But she played Dorothy in a production of Wizard of Oz when she was 10. And it got her into performing. She was like, I actually love this stuff. And so then she became a theater kid and started acting in school plays. And then when she graduated from high school, she enrolled in Boston College. At Boston College, she joined their improv troupe called My Mother's Fleabag, and this inspired her to pursue comedy professionally. She graduated from BC in 1993 and then moved to Chicago, where she started to pursue comedy professionally while being a waitress and, working other jobs to make ends meet. And here is where she took a class at Improv Olympic, where she met Tina Fey. And Tina would later go on to be Amy's replacement in a Maine Second City company. And then in 1995, Adam McKay left UCB, the Upright Citizens Brigade, and Amy became his replacement. And then a year later, a group of 4 UCB people named the Core 4 left UCB Chicago and moved to New York to start doing UCB things there. And these people were Amy Poehler, Matt Walsh, who's from Veep and Dancing with the Stars and is not that Matt Walsh, not evil Matt Walsh. Matt Besser, I don't like when there's multiple men named Matt in one place, but I'll let that slide for this one. It was 3 decades ago. And Ian Roberts. So they start performing at venues around the city. Amy starts making regular appearances on Conan, and they start teaching improv classes. They establish the UCB Theater in New York to make money outside of performances. And then they get the UCB Theater up and running, and they do shows there 7 days a week. And they really popularized long form improv in New York City. Comedy Central even debuted them as a half-hour sketch comedy series in 1998, but it was canceled after its 3rd season in 2000. And then Amy started acting in movies. In 1999, she was cast in Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo, and then in 2000, she was cast in Wet Hot American Summer, which did not make a splash at the box office, but did pick up a following after it was released to DVD. In 2001, she finally joined the SNL cast after Tina Fey had been trying to recruit her for years, and she made her debut in the first episode after 9/11. And then after 1 season as a featured player, she was promoted to a main cast member, making her only the 2nd person to ever do this after 1 year and the first woman. She married Will Arnett on August 29th, 2003, which was very interesting to me going through this because she started a new level 3 peak period on August 27th, 2003. It's like zodiacal releasing even knows the day you got married. Okay. And Amy and Will worked together on several projects, including Arrested Development, Blades of Glory, Horton Hears a Who, and The Secret Life of Arrietty, which is an anime film on HBO Max, actually, and I watched it last year on Shrooms, and it was perfection. I really cannot recommend this enough. In 2004, Tina and Amy became the Weekend Update co-anchors on SNL, replacing Jimmy Fallon, and they and Maya Rudolph were some of the biggest stars on SNL that season and were fundamental in driving SNL towards more female-oriented sketches because they were so popular. In 2006, Tina left SNL to focus on 30 Rock, and so Amy was joined by Seth Meyers, and Seth describes her as the most generous laugher during read-throughs for SNL, and also said that she was the one who was always trying to make any of the guest hosts that they have for SNL comfortable during the read-throughs and while they were on set, and she was just so accommodating, and I'm like, Virgo. 2008 was the first year that SNL actors were eligible for Emmy Awards, and that year she received her first Emmy nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series. As soon as they were eligible for awards, they were and give it to Amy. 2008 was also the year that she appeared in Baby Mama with Tina Fey, and she just continued to be cast in and appear in movies throughout this time period. She gave birth to her first son, Archie Arnett, in October 2008. And then a few months later, in April 2009, Parks and Rec premiered, which was originally supposed to be a spin-off of The Office because of the massive success of The Office, but ended up being just a different show entirely, not a spin-off, but having a similar speaking to camera vibe. Amy played the lead character Leslie Knope, and the creators were actually given a prime spot right after the Super Bowl in 2009, but they actually pushed back the show so that Amy could be the lead because they wanted her so badly for this role. And then by season 5, she became a producer on the show and started writing some of the episodes. In August 2010, she gave birth to her second son, Abel Arnett, and then she and Will announced their separation in September 2012, which was also a new L3 peak period for her in zodiacal releasing, because what if I told you none of it was accidental? It's all astrology's greater plan. Will filed for divorce in April 2014, and then it was finalized in 2016. Honestly, the divorce process seems really miserable, and we definitely need to fix that when we do our vigilante shit on a larger scale. You cannot be forcibly tied to a man like this with all these hoops that you have to jump through. Men are notoriously horrible at jumping through hoops. And, you know, women can't handle all that paperwork in addition to all of the rage that we already feel. The rage needs to be expressed in some way that's not paperwork. And yet they keep giving us papers. And it's like, what am I supposed to do with this? She and Tina hosted the Golden Globes in 2013. They did such a great job that they were asked to come back in 2014. They did such a great job that they were asked to come back in 2015. And then Amy was like, this is the end. We will never do this again. And then they hosted again in 2021. But because of COVID, they had to remotely co-host from separate locations. And then in 2014, she was approached by Abby Jacobson and Alana Glazer about their web series, Broad City, and she was asked to guest star in the final episode of their web series. And I also listened to Abby and Alana's podcast episode with Amy yesterday, and Amy was saying that Alana was like, yeah, you know, we thought about reaching out to you. We thought about reaching out to Jonah Hill, and Amy was like, genius move of you guys to say that you were thinking about going to Jonah Hill, because I saw this like very, very funny women driven like modern comedy and was like, there's no way I'm letting Jonah Hill get his grubby little paws on this one. And so Amy was the person who brought Broad City off of the web and shopped it around to different networks. They were originally pretty discouraged because FX didn't want it, but then Comedy Central picked it up. And then we have the Broad City that we have today, which is just one of the greatest female-driven shows ever. So Amy was actually the producer of Broad City, which ran for 5 seasons until it ended in 2019. I thought this was interesting. In 2016, she received a letter from the city of Beverly Hills for her excessive water usage during the California drought, which was literally a plot point on Hacks. So I'm wondering if they were referencing Amy or if they were referencing some other water-hungry Californian. Amy is a vocal feminist, and she has started like web series for girls. Obviously, Broad City was intended to empower women, and her production company, Paper Kite Productions, had an all-female staff as of 2019. She made her directorial debut on the Netflix film Wine Country, which starred a bunch of other like female SNL alum Maya Rudolph, Anna Gasteyer, Rachel Dratch, Paula Pell, Tina Fey, Emily Spivey. And so I watched this movie the other night, and it's so silly and fun. I definitely recommend if you're just looking for a light evening. I was disappointed but not surprised to see that it has a very low rating and a lot of hate on Letterboxd. Men really don't know how to have fun. Like, hello, a movie does not need to be Paul Thomas Anderson for it to be good. I guess I will never understand the perspective of like, if this movie wasn't technically perfect, then I can't say I enjoyed it. When I'm just like, if I have fun during a movie and if I enjoy it, then I enjoy it. I don't care if it's highbrow, lowbrow, any kind of brow. But I think it's also just like people being really uptight and trying to have so much like moral and artistic high ground and be like, ugh, I have better taste than you. And it's like, do you, or are you miserable? Because I'm enjoying a cute little movie with a bunch of amazing comedians. But my one critique is that they introduce Molly pretty early in the movie, Chekhov's MDMA, and then they never do it. And the whole point of the movie is that they are not actually sharing things with each other and they're all keeping a lot of secrets. And I was like, this literally can all be solved as soon as you do Chekhov's MDMA, and they never do it. But anyway, in 2023, she had a scripted podcast called Say More with Dr. Sheila. And then earlier this year in 2025, she launched her own non-scripted like interview podcast called Good Hang with Amy Poehler, which I have been listening to and I definitely recommend. She is a really great interviewer. And I really enjoy like the way that she's so naturally progressive. Like she had Cola Scola on and she was very comfortable like using they them pronouns with them. I just find it really heartening to see like a 53-year-old comedian who is able to transition very easily to progressive topics and mindset. But it does show up a lot in her birth chart. Like I'm not surprised that she is this way. So that's an overview of Amy's life, and now we'll dive into her astrology. Amy Poehler is a Virgo Sun, a Leo Moon, and an Aquarius rising, meaning that Saturn is her chart ruler. And I started talking a little bit about reception in my last episode, so I want to expand on that a little bit more today. I don't have that much to say about her sun and moon, honestly. I feel like I've covered both of these placements before, and she has so many interesting aspects in her birth chart that I just want to get to the good stuff. But for the sake of introducing reception, the basis of reception is that in astrology, every planet has a house. Every sign is ruled by one of the 7 traditional planets. Aries and Scorpio are ruled by Mars. Taurus and Libra are ruled by Venus. Gemini and Virgo are ruled by Mercury. Cancer is ruled by the moon. Leo is ruled by the sun. Sagittarius and Pisces are ruled by Jupiter. And Capricorn and Aquarius are ruled by Saturn. And for the sake of this example, you can think of each of the signs as a house or like as an estate, like a physical house, a home. And so Amy's sun, which is the ruler of Leo, the day of her birth, he's on vacation at the Virgo Manor. And the Virgo Manor is owned by Mercury. And so the sun is at Mercury's house staying there. And if you're staying at someone's house, it's helpful if they're there because they have resources, like they know where stuff is. They know where the nearest place to get a good pizza is. Otherwise, you're going to have to comb through these Yelp reviews and end up with like maybe a bad pizza. So fortunately, Amy's Mercury is also in Virgo. So even though the sun is not at his own house, he is able to talk to Mercury, who is the owner of the house, and get his needs met. And so this is the idea of reception. Are you at a house where you are either a dignified guest, which is exaltation, or it's literally your house? Like, do you have all the resources you need to do your job? No, for Amy's sun. But do you have a direct line of communication with the owner of that home? In Amy's case, yes, Mercury is also there staying in the house, so her sun is well positioned. Now we can do the same thing for her moon. Amy has her moon in Leo, which we just discussed is the sun's house. Now the sun is staying at the Virgo Manor, and because Leo and Virgo are right next to each other, they don't form any of the traditional aspects, they actually can't talk. Like the telephone lines have been cut, or one of them has no service, just like in the movie Wine Country. And so the moon is staying at the sun's house, the Leo Manor, but has no way to ask where the extra paper towels are stored or how to turn on the hot tub because they can't get the bubbles to work and it's cold, but they can't get a hold of the sun. They don't know what to do. So they're having a sort of a bad time. We've all had an Airbnb host who didn't respond to our messages in time. And so that is the concept of reception. I'll talk about that with the other planets throughout this episode, but that's her sun and her moon overview. 8th house Virgo sun, 7th house Leo moon. And there's also a lot more to this. There's other rulership systems. There's one called triplicity and one called bounds and one called decans, but I will dive into that more later. Let me know if you have any questions about this because I am planning to make more intro astrology videos. I'm actually just like so excited to move back home to my parents' house and like be a little art girl in the basement like I was my whole childhood and like make visual aids and stuff. I've like so many things up my sleeve, but right now I'm in Facebook Marketplace hell trying to sell my belongings. So I haven't been as creative as I want to be, but it's going to change. So Amy is not just an Aquarius rising, but she is a 0-degree Aquarius rising. She actually has a bunch of 0-degree placements in her chart, very much like this is my first life sort of energy. Like I have all of this energy to go out and achieve and learn about the world, and I am not jaded, and I am just ready to go, like raring to go, but also a little bit of naivete. Aquarius risings are people who come across as very creative and independent and quirky and eccentric. Uranus is the modern ruler of Aquarius, so Saturn and Uranus sort of have co-rulership over Aquarius depending on what type of astrology you use. I studied traditional astrology more seriously, like I definitely use whole house systems, I definitely use the traditional rulerships, but I also think that it is good to incorporate modern astrology because it's modern. That's the new way. But I really don't like Placidus. Aquarius rising people also have a pretty dry and sardonic demeanor and sense of humor, but they can struggle with compliments from other people and displays of affection. Sometimes when someone hugs them, their initial reaction isn't hug them back. It's oh, what do I do? Someone's touching me. And they are known for thinking outside the box and being different and thinking of new ways to do things, but they can become a little bit stubborn and hard-headed about doing things their way and not anyone else's way, because Aquarius is a fixed sign. And so the traditionally progressive and open-minded sign of Aquarius can become paradoxically closed-minded, but just in a more progressive way. But they do in general keep people on their toes, and people often find them surprising because of their lack of conformity with traditional social standards. And I feel like this very clearly and accurately describes Amy Poehler. You know, she is a very naturally funny and charming and witty person. She does have a dry and sardonic demeanor. She is a longtime vocal feminist and supporter of LGBTQ plus rights. She was a woman in comedy at a time when it was such a male dominated and driven industry. And she really was a pioneer into bringing more women and making women feel more comfortable in the comedy space, because women have always been funny, but the male-centered entertainment industry hasn't always wanted to admit that. Aquarius is also the natural sign of the 11th house, which is all about communities and groups. And so Aquarius risings do really well when they work in collaboration with other people. And this also describes Amy super well. She formed the Core Four with 3 men from UCB in Chicago, and they moved to New York together. And she's created her own production company, Paper Kite, but she employs other women there, so they all work together. She's done her best work in collaboration with other people, which is very Aquarius. And as I mentioned, she has a 0-degree rising in Aquarius, which also means that she has a 0-degree descendant in Leo. And if you think about 0 degrees, it's the moment that a planet ingresses into a new sign, enters a new sign, or not a planet in this case, an astrological point. And so it's the purest, most undiluted version of that sign. The 0th degree of Aquarius is Aquarius in its purest, most optimistic, anything can happen. Literally, I am at the very beginning. There is nothing that can't happen that will happen in Aquarius, because over the next 29 degrees, we have to experience the whole Aquarius life cycle, and she's at the very beginning of it. And same thing with her descendant in Leo. The descendant is always by definition in the 7th house, and the 7th house is how we interact with one-on-one relationships. And so the descendant is a point that indicates how you act in relationship with other people. Leo is ruled by the sun, so the sun describes the way that these people act in relationship with others. The sun is the king. The sun is a little bit arrogant, but the sun is loyal. And so these people are really loyal friends who always want to be there for you, but they can be a little bit arrogant. They can have a thing where they only listen to themselves talk, and they think that other people don't notice, but other people do notice. It might be a little bit different because Amy's sun is in Virgo, and Virgo is by nature a sign that likes to serve other people and put other people before themselves. And in general, this balance of who I am as a person, my ascendant is Aquarius, but how I interact with other people is Leo, means that these people, they love interacting with people, but at the end of the day, they still want to protect their originality and their individuality. So they're the kind of person where if someone's oh my gosh, you're so charming, they'll be actually, I'm the most awkward person in the world, and then make a point of showing how awkward they are. If someone's you're so funny, they'll try to prove to you that they're actually very serious. They just don't want to be pinned down by anyone else's perspectives of them besides their own. The next placement I'm going to talk about is her 0-degree 11th house Sagittarius Jupiter and her 0-degree 11th house Sagittarius Neptune. What a combo at the 0th degree of Sagittarius, the sign of the archer, the sign that loves to adventure and learn and explore the world. It's just a beautiful energy. Like, looking at her chart, I was like, this woman was actually put here and given all of these gifts because she has so much to give the world. Like, she's here to make a real change. And she has. I mean, the comedy industry wouldn't be nearly as woman friendly today if it wasn't for Amy Poehler. And I fear it's still not super woman friendly. Like, they still do let male comedians have platforms and audiences, even if they've been incredibly misogynistic and even like harassing and abusive towards women. And Amy Poehler is here to put a stop to this nonsense. Whatever happened to Chris D'Elia, by the way? I hope he's rotting somewhere. In terms of reception, Jupiter's house is Sagittarius, so he does not need to look to anyone else to tell him where things are. That's his own house, and he knows where everything is. An 11th house Jupiter is someone who gets a lot of satisfaction and abundance and opportunities for growth and to achieve their goals through collaboration and through groups of people. There's likely a lot of people who just come into their lives who are critical people to work with to achieve their goals, which also explains all of the luck and good fortune that Amy has had in collaboration with other people throughout her career. They can also have a tendency to assimilate traits and assimilate identity from the groups that they're a part of instead of relying a lot on their own personal identity. And when it comes to healing, group therapy for these people is like one of the best healing modalities that they can do. These are very like positive, upbeat, future-oriented people. They tend to have a positive perspective towards the future, and they can definitely be people who are hated because other people are like, why would you think that everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows? The world looks pretty grim today. But it's just like, they're an optimist. Have you guys ever been an optimist before? It's really the only way I personally can get through things, because I need to believe I'm working for a brighter future, or that things in the future will be better, so that I don't run off and join the mermaids in the ocean like the main character does in the book Chlorine by Jade Song, which I just read and I highly recommend to anyone. It will make you want to run off and become a mermaid, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. One thing that this placement needs to watch out for is transferring their own personal development needs and goals to the group or to the future. They have a very strong tendency to procrastinate or to shirk their responsibility, and they need to remember that despite the group being such an important part of their lives and their journeys, they still have their own shit that they need to work on, and no one else is going to accomplish their goals for them. Now, an 11th house Sagittarius Neptune actually has a lot of similar traits. These people are warm and outgoing and have a friendly demeanor. People like them. They are naturally popular and charming people. They're very empathetic, very genuine, and very moved by the suffering of other people, and they tend to get involved in humanitarian work and work to support oppressed populations, which Amy very much does. But because Neptune lacks boundaries and the 11th house is about groups of people, these people can have a hard time establishing boundaries in groups that they work in, especially with Virgo as the sun. Like, these people have such a strong tendency to give way more than they get and put their own needs and goals last. These people are also super sensitive to other people's feelings. So when they feel accurately that other people don't like them, it will cause them a lot of strife, so they need to learn how to deal with that. But the 11th house is also about hopes and wishes, and something that is so hard for a lot of people. It makes it really hard for people to manifest and set goals and visualize their future, is that they don't know what they actually want. It's like, how could you make a wish? How can you manifest something when you don't actually want it and you don't actually believe it could happen to you for a bajillion reasons related to childhood trauma mostly? But these people are able to visualize what they want, so they can be really powerful and successful manifestors. And they also love the company of Neptunian people, so artists and poets, and in Amy's case, comedians. So both of these 0-degree planets in her 11th house make an exact sextile to her rising in Aquarius. A sextile is a positive and supportive aspect, so Jupiter making a sextile to her rising gives her just like an easy sense of abundance and an easy ability to achieve her goals. Which is like so interesting given that her chart ruler is Saturn, that she has all of this like Jupiter and Neptune and like abundant and happy energy, because that's so different from the nature of Saturn, which is like cold and wants boundaries and discipline. Like all of the significations of having Jupiter sextiling your ascendant are what I've already said. Positive personality, outgoing, warm, friendly, people like you very easily. But it can contribute to having a sense of like overconfidence and complacency that can prevent you from achieving your dreams. Like when everyone already likes your mask, you're like, why would I have to do inner work then? But I don't think that this has impacted Amy that harshly. And I think that that is a lot to do with her, one, Saturn being her chart ruler, and two, Virgo Sun. And having your rising sextiling Neptune is a little bit similar to having like a Pisces rising. Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces, in that it makes people very sensitive. Like you can pick up on the tiniest little changes in someone's appearance or their energy or their mood or the atmosphere. Like you can become a chameleon in teeny tiny ways that other people don't really notice, because you pick up on what you think people want you to be like, and then you make those adjustments to make them feel comfortable around you, which is technically being a people pleaser, but in a very minute way, with like very, very subtle changes where people can probably pick up on the energy. They can probably be like, I think she's not being herself, but they could never pinpoint what exactly you've done to make them feel that way. And this can be a struggle for them, because being a people pleaser is obviously not the best thing to be doing, and they have a hard time figuring out what they actually want and who they actually want to be versus things they picked up from other people of what other people want from them and what other people want them to be. They have to work really hard to block out the noise of external voices and be themselves, their true, authentic selves. And they also need to work on their natural tendency to escape into the dream world and avoid their problems. Sigh. All right, now we can move on to her 8th house Virgo Venus, which is at 28 degrees conjunct her 8th house Virgo Pluto at 29 degrees. So Venus, when it is in Virgo, is in fall, because Venus is exalted in the opposite sign from Virgo, Pisces. Venus is not the owner of the Pisces manor, that's Jupiter, but Venus is an esteemed guest. They have their own suite in Jupiter's manor. They have a big 4-poster bed with a canopy and lots of Venusian delights. They have people bringing them grapes every single afternoon as a snack and feeding them to them one by one. They just have everything they need over at Jupiter's house in the Pisces manor. And so in the opposite sign at Mercury's house, they actually have to stay in the dungeon. They're not allowed to see light. They are not welcome here. It's where they do their worst. But Mercury is also in this house, and Mercury doesn't have a personal vendetta against Venus being in Virgo. Venus is just like not really Virgo's vibe, and astrology is a world, I fear, where if we don't match someone's vibe, we do put them in the dungeon. But she still does have access to Mercury, who's here, so she can ring the bell that they have in the dungeon and be like, can you bring me some chips? And so not as bad as it could be. But Virgo is the sign where you probably least want to have Venus. And the reason that Venus struggles in Virgo is because Virgo is so logical and analytical, and Venus is about like love and pleasure. And so when you try to apply logic so strongly to Venus things, when you try to explain the feeling that you get in response to beauty, like the feeling of awe, is not necessarily a feeling that's supposed to be intellectualized. I mean, a lot of our feelings aren't supposed to be intellectualized, but you start trying to like overanalyze an Excel spreadsheet like pleasure and joy, and those things don't work very well together. You start to lose a lot of pleasure and joy when you need to put it in an Excel spreadsheet. These people also approach relationships from a very logical perspective. They're like, if you want to date me, you need to check the things on my checklist, basically. And they have very high standards, which can often lead to disappointment. And in the eighth house, which is really about like transformation and the deep depths of intimacy and sex, like you can try to intellectualize deep intimacy in your relationships, and that doesn't work out very well at all, because I feel like you can't really create deep intimacy if you're trying to make everything fit some sort of formula. And that is the downfall of Venus and Virgo in the eighth house. Although the eighth house also has to do with like shared resources and finances, and Virgo is very good at doing things that require spreadsheets like financial planning, so they have a benefit there. Having Pluto in the eighth house, and Pluto is the modern ruler of Scorpio, which is the natural sign of the eighth house. So Pluto and the eighth house go together like this. Pluto feels very comfortable here. These people are extremely resilient because they've been through experiences. They've had to become hyper independent. They know that they can do anything and they can really face any challenge. And at the 29th degree, which is like the opposite energy as the 0th degree, there's nowhere else for them to go. There's nothing more for them to experience. There's no more aspects to other planets and other signs that they can make. This is like their last stand. And so he's accumulated all of these experiences over his journey through the sign. He is jaded. He's tired, but he's also got that one last like burst of glory where he's going to be the fullest expression of Virgo, the fullest expression of Pluto before he moves into the next sign of Libra, which means that the Pluto principle is probably extremely strong in Amy Poehler. And just looking at this chart, like she has all of these positive aspects sort of like on this left upper corner. And then in the bottom right, though, she has so much eighth house activity with very personal planets and very striking placements that Amy Poehler is someone who has a very warm, outgoing, blonde personality, but she has a ton of stuff going on behind the scenes. Like there is so much of her that we haven't seen and that we might not ever see, honestly. But I think that she has a lot of power for transformation. And she has shown a lot of power for transformation in things that I've mentioned, but there's more. There's a lot more than you could ever dream of. This Venus-Pluto conjunction at the very last degree of Virgo makes an off-sign trine to her ascendant at the 0th degree of Aquarius. So it's not as strong because it's not 0 degrees of Libra, but it is pretty exactly degree-based trine. And Venus has a lot of the same significations as Jupiter when it's an aspect to the ascendant, especially since it's in a slightly easier aspect, a trine, whereas Jupiter was a sextile. Jupiter and Venus are both benefics. Jupiter is the greater benefic, Venus is the lesser benefic, but with an easier aspect. So it gives her a lot of like beauty in her outside and her inside. The rising is how we present to the world, both physically and personality wise. A lot of that is imbued with the charm of Venus. So she comes off as very charming, very beautiful, very attractive to other people. She has a natural love for music and art and clothing and anything that is a Venus principle. But once again, it can be hard for these people to develop a strong sense of self because when everyone likes your mask, you don't have a ton of incentive to do a lot of inner work. But she does because of all this 8th house stuff. And a rising trine Pluto is interesting because Pluto is a very intense planet. It has a lot of magnetism and allure, but is usually pretty intense and overpowering. But a trine is an easy enough aspect that these people can do and express Pluto things, like talk about transformation and revolution and their like non-conformist beliefs. And it won't be too much for other people. Where someone else could say these things and have people react really poorly, Amy has the ability to say things that are outside the bounds and have people be like, yeah, you know, that's an interesting thought, instead of being like really intimidated and put off. And since Pluto is about transformation and your rising is how you present to the world, these people are always making small tweaks to the way that they appear in this world, whether it's changing their appearance or changing the way that they like interact with people or changing their greeting, like going with a howdy this week. The next planet I'll talk about is Saturn, Amy's chart ruler. And so Saturn is in her 5th house of Gemini. Saturn is therefore in Gemini, which is Mercury's other house. The Gemini manor, Mercury owns that house, and he owns Virgo manor. And Saturn is staying there, and he can technically communicate with Mercury because Mercury is in Virgo, which makes a square aspect to Gemini. However, a square is a tense aspect. The square and the opposition aren't very easy communication. And Saturn doesn't have that many demands. Like, he's not asking for a lot, but he'll be like, hey man, I really can't get the oven to turn on and I need to bake some bread because I am Saturn and I bake my own bread and I don't get it from the store. Please help me. But Mercury might be like, why are you calling me? Why are you at my house? I don't really care to help you right now. Or just be like, I'm actually really busy with something else. Can you like figure it out? And so Saturn has resources, but depending on Mercury's mood for the day, he may or may not help Saturn with his needs. And if you like these like house and planets personified metaphors, I really think you'd be interested in something called 9 persona charts, which I am definitely planning on making a video on soon. It is so interesting and it really mirrors like parts work in internal family systems therapy, which I found to be very helpful for me. But Saturn in Gemini means that people are very cautious with the way that they communicate. Gemini is all about communication. Saturn makes you a little bit scared even about the topics related to that house, but very disciplined. So a Saturn in Gemini is someone who always thinks before they speak. They consider every single point of view. They figure out a way to communicate something that it's not going to offend anyone. They're very, very careful in the way that they speak, which can be a good thing, certainly, but can also be like, hey, man, live a little, like let loose. Like, the goal is not always to please everyone. The goal is not always to make sure that every single person clearly understands what you're saying. Sometimes you need to like forget about a certain audience so that you can actually get across the thing that you're trying to say. And they have a hard time with this. They're very logical and systematic thinkers and problem solvers, and they understand the benefit of discipline and perseverance when gaining knowledge. But there's more to knowledge than intellectualization. Like, you need to be able to tap into your feelings and understand how the things that you're saying are going to make other people feel and not the rational implications of saying something to another person. And in the 5th house, this means that you have this sort of like very logical, analytical approach to creativity, which can be a little bit tough, honestly, and to relationships, another 5th house topic. Going along with Venus in Virgo, the other Mercury ruled house. Mercury is so detail oriented and nitpicky. Like, these people have a hard time doing anything that might show them that they are not perfect. They have a hard time starting any project that they're not sure they're going to be good at, because then they might have to admit that they have flaws. But Hannah Montana told us years ago that nobody is perfect. So that's the lesson that they need to learn in this lifetime. 8th house Virgo Mercury, Mercury in his own house. Virgo does really well in Mercury. He's also exalted. Mercury has his own room. It's very different than Venus's. It does not have a canopy, but it has so many, like, it has wall-to-wall calculators, and we're talking like TI-89, not just TI-84. We're talking the really good calculators. It's got a PC to do spreadsheets on. It's got a Mac to do spreadsheets on. It's got so many different spreadsheet softwares. So Mercury in his own house, in his own special expansive suite, has all the resources he needs and more. And Mercury has a little bit of a hard time in the 8th house because the 8th house is a water house, naturally the house of Scorpio. And Mercury is all about cold, hard facts. He has to learn here that you can't use logic for everything. Not everything is explicable by science, much to the chagrin of many straight white men. You do have to let go of intellectualization at some point and just let yourself feel. Emotions are like any other living being. They have a life cycle. When they emerge, they want to be acknowledged. They want to be able to be born and to live their life. And then once they've lived their full life cycle, they can be laid to rest and not be passed on to the next generation as more trauma. And Mercury's like, well, that doesn't make much logical sense to me. Why do I have to feel the feeling if I can just think about it and then make it go away? And it's like, because feelings aren't like other things. Like, feelings don't really follow the laws of physics, and you're trying to apply the laws of physics to non-physical beings. Like, it's not going to work. Amy's Mars is in her first house, Aquarius, which is Mars in Saturn's house, but Mars can easily see Saturn here because Aquarius, where Mars is, makes a trine, a supportive aspect, to Gemini, where Saturn is. So Mars can call up Saturn, and Saturn's not always in a good mood, but it doesn't matter because they're on the fast line, you know? Saturn picks up their call first. What do you want? Okay, fine, I'll do it. No hesitation, no contestation. Mars is in a good place. Mars also likes the masculine air sign Aquarius because it does really well in outwardly moving signs like Aquarius. And Amy just has so much power. Like everything in her chart is so powerful, especially Mars conjunct the North Node. The North Node is your destiny. It's what you're supposed to be moving towards in this lifetime. And having it conjunct Mars means when you take action, you move towards your destiny. Like she has so much motivation to achieve her life destiny and her life goals, which is such a positive aspect, honestly. Like having Mars conjunct the North Node is a great aspect for anyone who needs to change the world. She also has Uranus and Chiron aspects to her North Node. Specifically, her Uranus in Libra makes a trine to her North Node in Aquarius, which means that your soul wants to be daring. Like you are constantly being drawn to go outside the box, to be innovative, to be yourself, and to eschew societal norms that aim to hold you back. To achieve your destiny, you need to get rid of all of that stuff and be your own person. However, the North Node is what is out of your comfort zone. Your South Node, which is opposite the North Node, is what you are naturally drawn to. It's where you naturally have a lot of skills. So it may feel very comfortable and natural for Amy to fall back on traditional societal norms, but especially having her rising here in Aquarius too, she is drawn towards being her own person, which helps her achieve her destiny. And then finally, she has her Chiron in Aries in the third house. A third house Chiron is usually a wound about being misunderstood. And an Aries Chiron is usually a wound about being self-assertive. And I'm sure that in her time in the male-centered comedy industry, there have been so many times where she was just assertive. You know, she was doing something that would get a man some respect, and she's been called bossy because of it. I mean, Tina Fey's memoir was called Bossy Pants, released around the same time as Amy's memoir, Yes, Please. But I think that she has really worked through this wound about self-assertiveness and wound about being misunderstood. I think Chiron is a lifelong process. Like she has more work to do here, but I think that she's really gotten through the wounded part and is now in the healer part where she's mentoring other women in the industry, her all-female production company, really helping other women get ahead and giving them resources so they don't have to face all of the hardships that she did when she was first entering the industry. And because her Chiron makes a sextile to her North Node of her destiny, she is going to find that when she works to heal her inner wounds, it brings her closer and closer to her destiny. If she's trying to achieve her destiny, it's going to bring up these old Chiron wounds until she manages to heal from them and use them to propel her forward. Her wounds are just an integral part of her story, and that's a very important thing to know. So that's what I have to say about Amy's chart. I do have some predictions for dates, specifically this December 2025. On December 1st, 2025, she enters a new level 1 peak period for her zodiacal releasing, which is a huge transition. And she also has a level 3 loosing of the bond on December 19th, 2025. So I think that this December, this winter for Amy Poehler is going to be very transformative, and we should keep an eye on her. I can't wait to have been doing this podcast long enough for a lot of my predictions to come through. My Justin and Hailey Bieber predictions already have. On September 16th, she's going to be turning 54 and entering a 6th house profection year. Every year has a different focus. In astrology, it's called annual profections. And so her 54th year, everyone's 54th year, is a 6th house profection year where you focus on 6th house activities, the work that you do every day. Mundane, like chores around the house, paying your bills, self-care, health, fitness, wellness. All of this is going to be a huge focus for her over the next year. And I think that with this focus on work, we're going to see a lot of this transition come out in the new ways that Amy chooses to do the work that she does every day. New formats, taking the podcast to a new level. I don't actually know what she's going to do, but I know the themes. Also on November 19th, 2024, Pluto entered her first house, Aquarius, for the last time. Pluto's gone back and forth over her 0-degree ascendant probably like 3 or 5 times. I was trying to count with the retrogrades, but then I got distracted several times. So she has been going through a really intense transformation in like the way that she presents to the world. And now Pluto is in Aquarius full time for the next 20 years. So it's going to hit her Mars. It's going to hit her North Node. There will be a lot of transformation in the way she takes action, in the ways that she achieves her life goal. I think she'll probably realize, you know, certain things that didn't work and certain things that did work, release the things that no longer serve her so that she has room for the things that do serve her. And I also think that she is going to come out as some flavor of queer. I think that her conversation with Renee Rapp on her podcast actually really made me feel this way. And then watching Wine Country the other day and seeing her in a sweater with a giant rainbow stripe across it was not helpful for this theory. I definitely think that that is part of a change we're going to see over the next year. And this is also shown by Uranus, which just moved into her 5th house of Gemini. 5th house is about relationships, new innovation in the way that she does relationships. And then Saturn and Neptune just moved into her 3rd house of Aries, which is communication, travel, short distance travel, primary education, making dreams a reality there. So somehow taking all of the things that she could possibly dream of in this 3rd house realm and using Saturn's presence to help build them into structures that are supportive and that last. And that, my friends, is Amy Poehler's birth chart. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that you loved this episode. And if you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you subscribed to my channel and gave this video a like. I am so grateful for all of your support. If you are interested in booking an astrology reading with me, you can do so at popstrologypod.com/readings, or you can go straight to the bookings page at calendly.com/popstrology. I'll do first-time birth chart readings. If you have a question and you want an answer, I'm happy to do that as well. I can do an overview of your year or your month, what you should focus on, where your challenges are going to arise. And I can do synastry readings if you have a new beau or a new romantic interest or like a potential business partner or something, and you want to know if they're a good fit for you. I've got you on that one. So these are the links where you can book a reading, and you can also follow me on social media. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at popstrologypod, and you can also follow my personal Instagram account at astrojessie_. And there are more ways to contact me in the caption down below if you are interested in talking further. Anyway, I love you very much. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a fabulous week and beginning of August. Bye.